you are making yourself walk through graveyards at night.
Yes.
So that you stop being scared of the darkness.
Yes.
Are you serious?
My name is Steve Featherstone. I have spent 40 years in the British Army. Those experiences that have been forged in fire, I now share for life. I am a coach for Ubiquitous and a keynote speaker for SpyQ. In life, we're open to criticism, and I welcome them. Going through life and not being challenged in the same environment, a little bit boring and a little bit lonely.
So you're being kind to yourself when you throw yourself into cold water?
I don't want to get comfortable. I do everything that is going to cause discomfort because I know when I get back that actually I've achieved something that many others won't even consider.
Your 3-step process to regaining control of yourself in the midst of utter chaos and stress.
Regulate, reframe, reset.
I like it.
If you doom scroll in the morning, stop that for 10, 15 minutes. Do something that benefits you. But as we get older, the body needs to be exercised. You need to put yourself through certain situations and environments to keep that resilience.
Well, I was in a high-stress environment. I was on The Apprentice. I did the scene where I left publicly. You had to do it a couple of times to get it on camera. And when I left that scene, I then had a little cry. But I was like, you're not getting that on camera.
If it wasn't on camera, just how much would it resonate with society if it was on camera? My name is Steve Featherstone. I have spent 40 years in the British Army, the Royal Engineers. Those experiences that have been forged in fire, I now share for life. I am a coach for Ubiquitous.
Steve, welcome to Beyond the Boardroom. Right, what we're going to do today is we're going to dive into your story. I want you to tell it as if we are sitting together, audience included, that are watching us around a campfire.
Okay.
Tell us your story, because it's wild.
So my story starts at the very young age of 13 years old, when I started to have a conscience and really understand about me as a person.
Okay.
I always had this aspiration to join the military. And that was my desire. I had carved out a purpose, and that was my intent.
Was someone in your family in the military?
My dad.
Okay, so you had a role model. Okay, so you want to join the military?
Absolutely. And, back in the 80s, that was the done thing. Clearly, mentally, I was prepared for this, so I thought, and physically. But as I get older and time goes on, I kind of realized I have a fear, and that fear was darkness. Now, I didn't really equate darkness to join into the military because why would I? I was enthusiastic, I wanted to go and do something, and never really thought about anything else. I didn't do too well at school because I know I was joining the army. But at the same time, as I'm starting to develop more and more of understanding, the realization hit me one day when I was watching TV and I saw an advert for the British Army, and they do 80% of their fighting at night. And I kind of realized that, I'm scared of the dark. How's that going to work?
When you say you're scared of the dark, like, what is it? You can't turn your light off at night because you get scared? What is this?
I couldn't turn the light off. I wanted to be home before the darkness closed in.
So you really like a morbid fear?
Terrified.
At 13. And did your friends recognize this?
No.
Were they like laughing and going, ha, 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 you're scared of the dark? Were you getting that or what?
No, I hid that. I
hid it from them?
There was a part of me that had this rebellious arrogance, as invincible, as indestructible. But I knew deep down that there was something that made me very uneasy.
Did your parents find it unusual? Did they think, they must have known.
I don't think they knew. They just thought I was a very good kid being home on time before it got dark. But the purpose behind it is that I realized that I had to do something about it.
Okay. So you're literally living with this fear. You're trying to hide it and you're morbidly scared of the dark. What's in the dark that you're scared of?
I think it was the fear of the unknown, the uncertainty. I constantly analysed it. There was paralysis. I wasn't too sure, what options I had. I felt closed in. I felt suffocated. It was a part of my life I look back quite fondly. And it reminds me that if I put my mind to it and have the courage, I can break through. That darkness in itself was something that defined who I was. I wanted to join the military. I had such a desire that I knew I had to face my fear.
Okay.
And that fear came in, strangely enough, is walking through graveyards at night. I had to find the most scariest environment or situation just to get rid of the fear.
So this is before you go into the army now, because you know that you want to go into the army, but you're terrified of darkness. So you are making yourself walk through graveyards at night.
Yes.
So that you stop being scared of the darkness.
Yes.
Are you serious?
It is completely random, but I couldn't find any other way.
Well, it's more than random. It's madness. You're walking. I mean, even I'm not morbidly scared of the dark, but I would be scared to walk through a graveyard. I think it's creepy. Yeah,
it's creepy, but the fear. But then it became the excitement. I transitioned from fear to excitement. The excitement of the unknown, and then I started to become really comfortable with the darkness. I felt at ease. My kind of nervous system was now steady. I wasn't sprinting through the minefield.
Well, you probably realised that the ghosts weren't going to get you when you walked through the graveyard, so you were okay, and you probably did that. Well, how many times did you walk through graveyards? Do you know?
Countless times. I had a paper round that required me to have the long way around down to town or to walk through the graveyard. I always chose to walk around it, but on these occasions, I knew I had to get over that fear and decided to walk through.
Oh. And what's going through your mind when you're going through that graveyard?
I don't really know. I wanted to understand myself better. Why was I feeling the way I was feeling? What does that trigger? I'm 13, 14 years old, so I have no idea what I'm experiencing.
Ghosts? I mean...
TV doesn't help. The Daleks definitely didn't help.
No. Vampires?
Doctor Who? No. But hiding behind the couch, all of these things, they served a purpose. And I look back quite fondly all the time, remind myself where I was and where I came to. And if we fast forward today, I love diving in the dark, pitch black. I love the dark. It brings me peace.
Does it actually? I mean, that's...
It does. It brings me peace.
You want to dive in the dark?
I swim in the dark. I dive in the dark.
Why? Why?
I think it reminds me of the difficulties I've had to where I got to and how I was able to achieve it. It brings me a sense of calm. It's relatable. You know, I was in the deepest, darkest fear, but to get to where I wanted to get to, sat here today with you, 40 years later, I always look back on the trials and tribulations of my life, which has carved out the path to success.
Okay, so you're doing the paper rounds, you're walking through graveyards, you've got this ambition of the army, then you get into the army. Is that fear still following you into the army?
No. Completely severed. I actually embraced and loved the darkness on exercise, and especially as a young lad at 16 years old, you're camped under a basher, which is a sheet on the trees, the stillness, the darkness, the wind, the complete isolation. I loved it. And I knew at that time that I'd conquered a fear that most probably would have kept me or held me back on a different course of life.
Yeah. I mean, lots of people will be watching this, and many would have been scared as children of the dark and, kept their light on for a little bit longer. But it seems that you had even more of a fear. It was really a thing for you, and it grew and grew and grew. So is the confrontation the thing that burnt your fear?
I had a strong desire to follow my dream. And that desire was to join the military. I didn't see any other option for me, and that was most probably down to a blinkered view. But that was my passion. That was my drive. I had to get there. So knowing that at that age, I had to do everything possible to make me successful to get there. So,
you had to overcome that, and then you're in the army. And in the army, did you meet other fears?
Plenty. The fear of standing up and presenting to people if you're doing lessons. I learned in the military that consequence is a very good motivator. I always viewed consequence as a negative. Consequence is a positive and a negative, and you're rewarded for what you do, and you're also penalised for what you don't do. And the military taught me many different things about myself. The fear of failure. I didn't want to fail because it meant so much to me. But at the same time, it allowed me time to grow. Comfort and growth can't coexist. And when I joined the military at 16 years old, my life was chaos. It was organized chaos. There was a structure in place. But internally, I was in complete turmoil.
Why?
Because I was learning something new. I was being stripped of my identity. My identity was being stripped in a way that benefited the military. I was no longer this...
They do that, don't they? You're a number then.
Yeah, I call it the shoal of fish syndrome, in that everyone joins the military with a persona, with an identity.
Yes, of course.
And we all operate very differently. Our values are maybe different, our education, our backgrounds, so we all come there different in many ways, eclectic sometimes. But at the same time, you have to operate together as a team. You have to have those shared values, that shared mindset, that motivation. And I look back now and I say to myself, well, now I get it. All of that chaos was serving a purpose. It was redefining me. It was bringing structure. Actually, it was making me competent in many ways. And I grew up very quickly when I was going through my training.
Okay. So you're growing up and you're facing fears. And the fears, it's strange because I was expecting you to say, with the army that, your fear of getting shot at, or your fear of being killed, or your fear of all the stuff. And you're going, the fear of standing up in front of people and speaking.
Yeah.
That's the fear.
Because there's a fear of rejection. There's a fear of judgment. And the military is great because they do exactly that. You'll give a lesson and then they'll mark you down and say, the bad things, the good things, and everything else. But you learn from that. That is a discomfort. That's the growth. And I learned from an early age that I have to be more accepting of criticism.
Yeah.
And I find that liberating because no one's perfect as much as they think they are. But I found that being corrected, being reminded that there's room for improvement, helped me maintain my course of success.
It obviously means a lot to you because when you came in this morning, one of the questions that you asked me before we started the podcast was, how do I handle trolling? And I'm lucky in the sense that I don't get much of it. Everyone gets some of it. I don't get lots, but I do get it. And it was interesting that you found it interesting, Why did you want to ask me that?
In life, especially my time in the military, 40 years, people would say, oh, you're indoctrinated. I think it's a structured environment and we're open to criticism. We're open to other people's opinions and views. And I welcome them because actually I love to hear other people's point of view for whatever reason. But that's not what I'm really interested in. What I'm really interested in is why do they have it? What is below the surface? What is their values? Mm-hmm. What is their knowledge? If I allow their problem to maybe be a me problem, then it's a me problem. So I'm not particularly interested in what's being said. It's more about why are they saying it?
I mean, if it's of relevance, of course.
If of relevance.
Yes.
But even so, what promotes someone to say the things that they do? They may be going through a very difficult time. It may resonate or chime to a particular event that makes them feel as if they don't feel worthy enough and they have to say something to validate themselves. I love people, and I've learned in my time how people can behave differently in different events and scenarios and situations.
Mm-hmm. Okay, how is that then?
Well, for example, we spoke about fear.
Yeah.
We have two fears. We have the fear that helps and the fear that doesn't. Fear of preparedness, we're prepared. It sharpens our focus. It sharpens our perspective. Actually, it allows us to prepare ourselves for uncertainty and potentially the unavoidable. As an example, going on operations. When we deploy on operations in the military, what are we to expect? Cognitively, behaviorally, physiologically, psychologically, there's so many different things to think about. And that may impact how we behave. but we're prepared, we're trained. You're trained in a way that protects you. It gives you resilience physically and mentally. To go on operations, you'd most probably start training 12 to 6 months before you deploy. Whereas the fear that kind of imprisons us is the fear that puts us in this loop of destruction, avoidance, imagination, rumination. It steals our freedom.
Yeah. The fear that makes you sit in your own head, paralyzed, so you're not actually doing what you need to be doing because you're too scared of doing what you need to be doing.
Absolutely.
Because you're having fear.
Yeah.
But yeah, being prepared is a wonderful, liberating thing. Eliud Kipchoge, the marathon runner, always says that it gives you freedom. You know, if you're prepared and you're disciplined and you're organized, with that comes a level. The consequence is that you actually lead a more relaxing life. You're free to live the life that you want to live because you're not living in disorder and chaos and the jail of the negative fear. That's what you're saying, basically.
Yeah.
And that is true. You know, for me, I love the preparation, you know, for a podcast, and you do your research and you get the questions and you have the pre-podcast call, all that sort of thing, because there's a structure, a format, a system that keeps everything organized and on schedule and flowing and professional and all that kind of thing. But then it's also nice to be spontaneous, but I would prefer to leave the spontaneous things for a spontaneous holiday or, you know, surprise me. Where should we surprise me? You know, but never really for work stuff. I don't particularly love surprises, but I'm wondering if that's also not good because you need to embrace the unpredictable. But that's also what you're saying with darkness. You have to embrace the unpredictable.
Change, challenge is what makes us who we are.
Yeah.
Going through life and not being challenged, not embracing difference or recognizing that you are different to other people in the same environment, it gets a little bit boring and a little bit lonely. I love the idea of meeting new people in new environments. I qualified as a jet ski instructor about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
Everyone's questioning me, why did I do that?
Yeah,
because having been in the military for 20 or to 40 years even, I understood the framework. I understood the DNA of individuals in the military. But I'm now out of the military and I didn't understand the civilians. I could walk into a pub and sit down and have a conversation, but that's just a really small snapshot of civilians outside of the military. So I decided that I needed to do something different. I needed to learn about people's behaviors in high stress environments or high octane events. And so I kind of got myself qualified and then became a jet ski instructor for Jurassic Jet Skis in Weymouth and had the most amazing time. But I learnt more. It was more about research for me and more about people and their behaviors.
But that's wild because you're with people in the army setting in a very stressful setting. And I come back to the fact, I still can't believe that you'd be more afraid of standing up in public than you are of bullets and all these things. But you were in high stress environments with people. So are you saying that in the army, people are, because they're so stripped of their identities, that they lose something there? And that therefore civilians, and hello, civilian, civilian. So civilians very much love my identity actually as a civilian. But are you saying that there's a fundamental difference there in terms of personality and that kind of thing?
So I'm very fond of the military. The humour that it is, the complete different language that's been muted. I can go into a bar and pretty much within about 5 or 10 minutes, if someone's talking about a particular thing or using phrases or words, I know they're ex-military, and they could be there with a bushy beard and completely just enjoying life in their own way. There's that brother sisterhood that's always present, and I feel it, and I think it's fantastic. When I left the military, I felt as if I left a part of it. And you'll see it with so many veterans where they always come together, and there's various groups that support each other in many different ways. I always felt that I wanted to be more understanding of civilians as well. I understood the military. I understood what I needed to do when I left the military. but also I wanted to fit in, more so understand others. And that emotional intelligence transcends not just in the military, but also everywhere else. And I use jet ski as an example. I met the most amazing people. They were in an extreme, stressful situation when they're cutting across the southwest coast on a jet ski at 50 miles an hour. And you could see the chaos in their eyes, the fear. And that was an opportunity for me to give that reassurance, to give stability and just say, give them some coaching trips to enjoy it.
So let's step into that. So, and obviously you have been in a lot of high stress situations and things like that. So what do you say to someone in the middle of a high stress situation to get them through it? Breathing
is power. Regulate. Don't try and think your mind through into calm. The body needs to relax. So it's breathing, relax. The tension in the body has to be released. It's dropping the shoulders, taking deep breaths. It's reframing what you're experiencing. And then rather than reacting, we respond. That's what I call the reset. So it's regulate, reframe, and reset. And I go through this pretty much several times a day because there's situations that I've not experienced in the military. And on the face of it, they could be very trivial, but it affects my values and my beliefs. And there's a conflict of emotions and values. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to react. So I prepare myself, breathing. I always sigh. Sigh is a way of me releasing that kind of negative energy. And then using that to find a position where I feel comfortable and I'm calm.
When you're in the midst of chaotic stress and anxiety, thinking about your body is not a natural thing to do because your mind is racing and it is thinking about the issue and it's very, very psychological. So what you're saying is when you know that you're in the midst of all that upheaval, chaos, it's actually get out of your head and go into your physical body, regulating your breathing. So that's step one. Okay.
Yeah.
How long do you do that for?
As long as it takes.
As long as it takes. You have a very long time with me.
Well,
how long have you got?
It's fighting biology with biology.
Gosh. Yeah. So talk us through your 3-step process to regaining control of yourself in the midst of utter chaos and stress. Let's go.
Okay, so in chaos and stress, first of all, I have to control myself, so I breathe. I find that breathing process, and there's a variety of ways of doing it. Mine's simple: inhale, hold, and exhale, hold, and so on and so forth. And I do that for about a minute. I then look at the situation or the event to reframe it. I'm not at threat. I may be in threat mode, fight or flight, but actually right now I'm just processing what's going on and focus on the first thing that needs to be resolved rather than the whole of the situation. I then find a moment of silence, I call it, a step back, look at the bigger picture. Am I safe? I am safe. I haven't reacted, I can now respond. And respond may be in silence, respond may be just to step away from a situation that I can no longer control. But I can control myself, and that's what's really important. Controlling yourself and not exacerbating the situation more than what it should be or what it is.
So relax. Reframe.
Regulate, reframe, reset.
Regulate, reframe, reset.
Yeah.
Okay.
I work in 3s, and the reason being is that there's lots of mnemonics and all sorts out there that people use. Well, I'm a simple man, so I try to make things as easy as possible. Regulate, reframe, reset.
I like it. Regulate, reframe, reset. Okay. Regulate, reframe, and reset. So in the reset, you respond, really.
I respond. And that response could be silence. Silence is strength. It really is a powerful place to be. If you do not react in a way that exacerbates the situation, but can stand there, accepting what's gone on, or what's happening.
I love reacting, though.
Yeah, there's a consequence.
I'm an
to that
action
reacting.
person.
Well, so am I. I love action.
You definitely are.
I love action.
Yeah.
I'm all about movement. I'm all about doing things.
Action figure, yeah.
But there's parts of the things
That's hard to be silent. Oh,
But go back to jet skiing. The amount of scenarios and events where I could have got really upset because it's about safety as well. But no, I was doing the 3 R's. I was
gosh.
regulating, reframing, and
So
resetting.
are you seriously, so you really, in these situations, you are really doing these 3 things and you're actively managing yourself.
Actively.
You're actively doing it.
Always.
Because people are probably going to watch this and they're not going to do it. That's the thing. They're not going to actively do it. Why do you actively do it? How do you remember to actively do it?
I've been doing it continuously. I've been doing it for many a year. I went for a really acrimonious divorce, which I can touch on later. But I do it because it's self-preservation. Stress, we know what stress does. Chronic stress, it's a killer. It suppresses the immune system. It can bring on heart disease. It accelerates aging. It's all the nasty things in life.
It's a nasty thing.
And I want to live forever. So, I realized the importance of it. I tell myself in a situation of high stress that there's a consequence. And that consequence is I have to control me. I can't control the environment. I can't control the situation, but I have to control me. But also, I have to control those around me. If they see that I'm calm and collected, let's use jet ski as an example, then everyone else will be calm and collected. If I go into a state of panic with my hair's on fire, invariably, everybody will see that, well, if Steve's panicking, we need to panic. So you've got to remain calm. But this doesn't happen, when I was in my teens and the 20s. It's developed, I spoke before about all of my life experiences forged through fire. I have gone through, highs and lows. I've been to some really dark places, my own experiences, which have encouraged me to use those experiences and share those life experiences in what I do now.
As you were talking, I remembered a scenario where, I was in a high stress environment, what I would call high stress. I'm not guns, not anything. And I'm actually not scared to speak in public. I actually don't have that fear, thankfully. However, I was on The Apprentice, and when I decided to walk off, I had already reached a point. I was under stress. I was feeling overwhelmed. The whole thing was just a disaster. In my own head, I was in that situation, that you're talking about, in that high stress moment. And, I did the scene where I left, publicly. You had to do it a couple of times to get it on camera. And when I left that scene, everyone, the cameras, all of it, I then had a little cry, which lasted a long time, surprisingly. I'm not really a crier. I can count on one hand the amount of times I've cried in my life. But I cried, and I was, in the moment, I was controlling myself. But after the moment where I finally had myself to myself, and I'm also embarrassed of admitting this, that I cried and I had that moment, but I'm going to say it, because I then let go, and I felt actually really good letting go, and I felt good having a little cry. Is that response?
Yeah, you've carried that stress, that internal, the weight within inside, just like a pressure cooker. You've had no release. And throughout what you've just described, that release was then telling yourself that it's finished now. I can be kind to myself.
Yeah.
And being kind's great. Crying's not a bad thing. Crying's a great thing. It's showing emotion. It's actually being in touch with your feelings. Emotional intelligence is huge.
Yeah. But I was like, you're not getting that on camera. You're not getting that. You're not getting that moment. So that was for me.
So a question then, if it wasn't on camera, just how much would it resonate with society if it was on camera?
I didn't want to do that in front of everyone. This is when you were saying about the group, you have to remember that it wasn't just me that was under that. All of the candidates were under serious pressure. And some of them were having probably even worse than me time. So if I had had a huge meltdown and cried in front of all of them, it would have made the whole thing worse for everyone. So in that moment, I was also managing the other people that I grew fond of. There were certain people in there I really, till today, I have good relationship with, and I didn't want that. I didn't want it to be a massive thing. I just wanted to leave, and I just wanted to evaporate from the scene, and I didn't want it to be a big, I wanted to have that's a private moment for me. And it would have made it worse, so much worse.
You think it would have made it worse?
So much worse, yeah. Well, for the people that were still stuck there. I mean, it was already bad enough that I'm walking because I'm going into freedom.
Yeah.
And they're still in jail, in my opinion. So it's already bad enough, and I'm letting them down and all that kind of thing as well.
Did
they're
they tell you
losing
that?
a member of a team.
Did they tell you that?
No, but it's
We are, and it's great what you're describing, because we interpret life very differently, and we're our own worst critics. And as you described there, I was letting the team down. But did you ask them that?
Well, they probably, in a way, I was doing them a favor because it's one less person they have to worry about in the competition. So in a way, but there is a task. It's a team thing. So obviously they have one person less. I was pretty good with details and things like that. So I had my value that I added. But yeah. But then again, I'm also competition, so.
And it sounds like the strength there was about showing the world that you wasn't bothered. You could hold it together. But actually, strength's very different. Strength's about processing it and continuing to function. And I use the army as an example, or the military, where we go on operations, soldiers, girls and boys, we do shed tears for a variety of reasons.
You did?
Yeah, it's not about holding that pressure within. It's about sharing the moment.
Wow. Okay. Because also I was in boarding school, and something that happened was a really bad moment. I don't want to say because obviously people know me, and the person probably wouldn't appreciate me repeating, but something bad happened, and it resulted in us, the friendship group, there were 5 of us, crying and being really sad. And we were told at that time, we were taken into a room and said, listen, if you're going to cry, you're going to do it here, behind closed doors, cry as much as you want, but when you leave this room, you are not to cry anymore. And you have to pull yourself towards yourself, get a grip, and then you can come out. And the door was shut. That is a true story. So we had to sit there, cry as much as possible, so that when we exited, we were all...
Yeah. But he was given a moment. It's that time to reflect.
Yes.
And allow those feelings, those emotions to bubble up and then be expressed.
Yes.
And it has to be. If you don't express your emotions and you hold them in, it's like a pressure cooker. At some point, it'll erode and it will get the better of you.
Yeah, I didn't at the time understand why we were left there to cry. But looking back at it now, and also what happened with The Apprentice, I do think that coming out with that, all of those displays of emotion, I think in that setting with everyone there, and it's boarding school and it's a sensitive situation, it would have made things worse. If you've got someone, it's like you were saying, someone panicking or someone having, the morale of the group is then affected a lot, and not in the most positive way. So actually, like, you release, but then release in a controlled manner is more what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. If you want to retain your position in society or an organization, then it may that you have to do that in private, amongst other people if they choose to share that moment with you. But at the same time, you also have a position that you want to retain. That position may be, if I'm seen to be showing weakness, how will they think of me?
Yeah, that's it.
I know leadership, leadership's been ingrained in me over the 40 years.
Okay. Do you think you're a good leader?
I'd like to think I am.
Why?
My leadership is not just measured on what people think of me. It's also written in your reports and how you are. And I always remember one of my commanding officers, Featherstone, demonstrates an amazing leadership, novel but effective. And I kind of question that. What is that? And what it is, it's about being relatable. It's about building relationships with your soldiers. It's about understanding their needs above your own. It's about inspiring, making the right decisions, even if it's inconvenient or it goes unseen. But leadership's about being present. And throughout my time, I have seen good leaders and bad leaders. And I've learned from both. I've learned not to do what I disagree with, but also emulate what I see. And over the 40 years, I'm actually quite blessed that in that filtering process over time, you get to learn a lot, not just about yourself, but other people.
Okay, 2 questions in that. The first one is, did you care about your soldiers? And when I say care about them, I mean, did you really care about them?
Yeah.
And the second one is, what does a bad leader look like, really?
So leadership for me, a good leader is about caring. It's about recognizing and understanding, but also knowing your soldiers. Not just know their names. What are their interests? What are their passions? What are their motivators? Not the leadership that goes unnoticed and we just do it because we're seen to be doing it.
Yeah.
Leadership is also, the bad leadership is when decisions aren't made or they can't be made. There's poor decision making, the reluctance or hesitation of making decisions because they don't want the regrets, they don't want to be judged. Gosh. They just want to make sure that they're doing the right thing for themselves to better their position as they go through the ranks. Oh, that's
a horrible, it's a selfish sort of...
It is.
Yeah.
But there's also, you have to understand their motivators. It may be that they've only got a limited time before they get promoted. It may be there's something else going on under the waterline that we don't get to see. What is it, their values, their attitudes? There may be something shaping the reason why they're behaving and what they're doing. And that's what I find fascinating. When I see an output, an action, someone says or does something, I'm more intrigued, why are they doing it? What is the driver behind it?
Well, a leader's traveling, he's moving with his group. It becomes one large thing that goes, it's not you by yourself, it's you with everyone. It's like a baggage. It's you together. You form a creature almost that works together.
Yeah, I wouldn't use baggage. I'd say responsibility and accountability.
Yeah.
Leadership becomes quite lonely. I remember being a sergeant major, and it's a lonely place because you can't have a bias. You've got to make sure that you're impartial. You've got to treat everyone fairly. If you kind of friend a particular organization or a group of people, then the other people feel a little bit left out. Well, you've got the favoritism of the sergeant major. But I learned all this as I kind of went through my leadership, and it continues to evolve. It will always evolve. Society changes. The army is a reflection of society. The leadership that I was accustomed to in the 1980s or 85 when I joined is very much different to the leadership now.
How?
Well, society has changed, that we have created it. There's a different culture. Intelligent people, they know right from wrong. They're more informed. They know so much more about their rights and what they shouldn't be doing, what they can be doing. I'm not saying that when I was doing it, it was toxic. It was really bad. But we didn't have the internet. We were told to go and do something. We did that, as long as it was ethical.
So leadership's changed, and what about you as an individual? So a leader, a person, a member of the army. You feel you're stripped of your identity. But were you confident then? Like really, really confident in yourself? And are you confident now? Has it changed?
When I left the military?
In the military, were you confident? And now are you confident? And is that confidence different? Like actually confident?
So my confidence has always evolved. There's been situations where I haven't been confident because I'm not entirely sure what's expected of me. But I have to remind myself it's about me. Don't control the situation, control yourself. And the more I've done this over the years, I've become to learn about every situation demands a different Steve. Every scenario demands a different Steve. And I have to be adaptable. But to be adaptable, I have to use my 3 R's. I have to regulate, I have to reframe, and I have to reset. I have to think about everything in advance, if sometimes right here and right now, that innate intelligence. But as I am developing, as I am learning, I'm always evolving. I have this thirst for learning. And now being a coach, I want to share that, So it's kind of a life coach, but it's not a life coach in terms of it's not everything. It's about self-awareness. It's orientation and alignment. It's finding your center. We get lost in distractions. We get lost in the busy world. And sometimes we lose ourselves. And what I've become really successful at doing is allowing people to find their way back by spending time with them, going through a kind of a journey of adventure, exploring where they are. How did they get there? What does it mean to them? Where do they want to get to? And using those experiences of past to help them find a way to where they need to get to now.
Are you helping them find their purpose?
Purpose is something that can't be found. It has to be chosen. You have to shoulder purpose. And that purpose is about redefining your behavior, your values, and motivation. Purpose is a responsibility, and you get held to account. We step away from purpose, we lose drive, we tend to just start to stagnate. And it's not about that. Purpose is, what do you want? What is the intended outcome? What are you working towards?
I wish that when they interviewed politicians, instead of asking them about, a very specific thing about, an action they've done or whatever, if they just, asked, what's your value on this? What do you really value here? What's important? What do you really care about? What do you treasure? What do you admire? What do you not admire? Those sort of values, morals, more than specifics that it's able to hide those.
Well, that goes back to the military. You get those values, it's courage, discipline, respect for others, integrity, loyalty, and selfless commitment. So those values are shared within the military. And why is that? Because we're all working towards a given purpose. So those values become the cornerstones of how we think and how we operate.
I love the military. I admire the values of the military. I think how selfless that is to go in and you putting yourself in harm's way to protect others. And then you as well as a leader, you've got these soldiers and they're relying on you and you've got to guide them and they are going to also be scared. They're going to have their fears and you've got to encourage them and help them. But you're working towards this greater good to protection of civilians, like me. And I just think it's incredible. And I wish the military had more respect in especially in the United Kingdom. It does in the US, but...
Yeah, I think, myself, the military it's been great to me. It's given me 40 years. It has carved out who I am. Leaving the military and entering what I call the Wild West, Civilian Street.
It is the Wild West. Welcome.
Was a little bit different.
Welcome to the Wild West.
It was liberating. So much free time. There was no structure in my mind. If I did what I wanted to do, no one was going to impose any standards on me. Yeah. But it became quite uncomfortable, given who I am and what I believe in. And I had to carve out a new structure. I have to make sure my routine gives me some discomfort. In the morning, it is wake up and the body does the work and the mind will wake up. Whatever the body does, the mind will follow. I have a routine in the morning.
I love that.
I go for a cold water swim, and I do all the things right for the body. I make myself bulletproof in the morning. And by the time my mind wakes up, my body's ready to go. And I feel fulfilled. I feel ready. If I take that away, after 2 or 3 days, I get grumpy because I know that I'm not doing what is right for me. I'm not being kind to myself. Self-love, positive talk, it all adds and means so much.
So you're being kind to yourself when you throw yourself into cold water.
Yeah,
is that right?
I need discomfort. My body needs discomfort. I need a challenge. I don't want to get comfortable.
Can't you just go running?
I do running as well. I do cycling. I do it in the rain. I do things. I do everything that is going to cause discomfort. Because I know when I get back that actually I've achieved something that many others won't even consider.
Do you know what I find? I go to physio, I had plantar fasciitis, and the physio it's ongoing, shockwave therapy. Okay. And they're basically like electrocuting your foot. But in the most sick and weird way, it's one of the most relaxing and simultaneously unpleasant things you can do because it's shocking you, which is awful. I mean, it's up there with childbirth. Let me tell you, when they go over that bone, it's like, ah! But when it stops, the relief.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're melting.
Yeah.
It's like you melt into that chair and all problems are gone. You forget.
Well, there you go.
Whatever problem you had.
My morning routine is exactly that. It's the endorphins. It's the I have done something for me.
So in the moment you hate it.
Oh, I
but
hate
it's
it.
afterwards.
Despise it.
Yeah. It's awful.
I reckon my body is on autopilot. I get out of bed, I do what I need to do, my exercises, I put my running shoes on and I go for a run.
How long do you run?
So 10Ks.
Oh, you
and then
run
I come
10Ks.
back and then I go for a dip in the sea. Or it may be that I decide to go for a dip in the sea and then go for a 5K run. I mix it up all the time.
So that it's uncomfortable.
And I hate going in the sea when it's like 9 degrees. But I know that I stop, that I will lose the resilience and it'll be twice as hard. So
Yeah. I hear you.
we speak about, what does comfort do? Well, if you have comfort in your life, eventually it will get the better of you. And I know if I stop doing whatever I'm doing, I will start to lose the resilience and it'll be so much harder to get in there. Then I have a life of regrets. Why didn't I pursue it? Why didn't I continue? So it does take discipline.
Oh, this reminds me of this. There's a story. I don't know if it's a Russian story or I don't know. But anyway, there's a story and maybe you might know it actually, of a guy who's trying to make it up a hill to the top. And the rule is that you will make it up to the hill if you don't look at these things that tempt you along the way. Because if you look at them, you'll turn into stone and become one of them on this hill.
Okay.
So if you look at this, all these stone figures, statues. So the guy would have to try and go up this hill without being distracted at all. And in this, I would put the comfort. Oh, just snooze that alarm clock. You don't need to go to work now. Go later. Why don't you take the day off? Or don't go running. Come on, it's raining. It's hailing. Look, there's ice. Don't do it. Or don't go in the cold water. It's, just don't do it. Not today. You might have a health issue. You might, all those things, those little whispers of temptation back into comfort. And it's quite sinister because it's so pulling. It's so inviting. It's like, look at that bed. It's comfy. But it's not serving you, and you'll just stagnate on that hill.
And that's my fear, stagnation. But also looking ahead, we take things for granted. We really do. Mobility. Walking up and down steps, we take for granted. But as we get older, the body needs to be exercised. You need to challenge yourself. You need to put yourself through certain situations and environments to keep that resilience, to keep the motivation, the sharp mind. Where I live, it's on a hill. They call it Heartbreak Hill for a reason.
Heartbreak
But
Hill.
I'm surrounded by, mature people in their 70s and 90s and 80s, and they're like mountain goats. And I'm one of those that I sit back and I observe. I love watching people.
Yeah.
I love listening and understanding them. And I always remember speaking to my neighbour and, she's been there 30, 40 years. And she always laughs and jokes. It'll kill me one day. But she's up and down like a mountain goat.
Awesome.
And when I see that, I commend their commitment for doing it. They could easily jump in the car and drive up and down. But they're doing it for maintenance of the body.
Fabulous.
And I will
Fabulous.
always walk everywhere in Weymouth where I live. I will never drive because I love the idea of using what is being given to us, but you have to maintain it before you make the mistake of not using it and it fails you.
Do you eat well?
I eat well.
How so?
I suppose in many ways, I I've kind of drawn myself into eating well. Mornings, bananas. I love coffee. I have a coffee. That's my stimulant.
Do you have proper coffee or instant coffee?
Oh, it depends what's on offer.
Just have any coffee.
Say any coffee.
Give me a coffee.
I'm really bad at coffee, but I recognise that I need to start drawing down on coffee a little bit. That's one of my comforts. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I can't stop doing it. I flip between different types of herbal tea. I like to try different things. I get inspiration from social media. Boiled eggs and avocado on sourdough. Fantastic.
I'm hungry now.
I'm a very healthy eater. I love spinach. I love salmon.
Steak?
I don't necessarily. I'm going off steak. I'm going off pork and all those
Love
things.
steak so much.
I go through phases. But I'm definitely someone...
Lasagna?
Lasagna. Love lasagna. Spaghetti bolognese I find messy, so I tend to stay away from
What's
that.
your favourite food in the whole world?
Mine, it will be salmon, spinach, and potato.
God, you are really healthy.
Yeah.
You've really trained yourself
It
up.
has to have a crispy skin though, and I've learned the skill of that.
learned the
It's cold
skill.
pan. It's a cold pan to get the crispy skin.
I'm
Start with a
sure
cold
you
pan.
have. I can just see you as someone going around and perfecting every stage, every single thing. I bet you it's all,
It's all about focus.
I bet you it's all exactly as it should be.
Which absolutely, there's a reason why. I recognised in my life that there were so many spinning plates and I wasn't giving my full attention and plates started to drop. What did it mean to me? I was trying to do too much and not doing what's just and focus on where the value is. What was a luxury, what was a necessity in my life? And I use that as a caveat for everything. Steve, is it a luxury or is it a necessity? It's a luxury. Okay, I can do without. And I move on. And I started to realise that if I focus on the things that really mean something to me, that's what I want to learn more. This year, I've promised myself that I'll do more. I'll do some ultramarathons. I love the idea. I'm getting older. I'm not as fast, but I love the idea of going far. I did the Caterham Jump last year, and I found it fascinating. 54 miles, isolation. You're by yourself, and the freedom. It's quite invigorating just to be there doing something and then putting your body, getting to know your body. I've never done more than 24 miles before and I enjoyed it. I started to explore new me. What did it mean? Well, I'll tell you what, I got cramp at 25 miles, so I need a hydration plan, but I was constantly learning about things, whereas before, when in my 20s and 30s and 40s, I just took it all for granted, took it in my stride. So now I focus my energy to really understand what brings quality.
Quality. I mean, there are some luxuries that bring quality. I think a good mattress is one of those.
Yeah, I agree on that.
Really nice, There are some that can benefit your life and some that are completely unnecessary, like overly branded stuff that's just like branded for no reason. Okay, so what should people take from you, from this podcast, that will meaningfully change their lives? I mean, we've spoken about a lot of things, burning through fear and having, the organized life and putting yourself in, structure your life accordingly and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations so that you can grow and maintain and, lots of things. But what do you think ideally you would want people to take from this?
If there was a strap line, I would say have the courage and the curiosity to change. And what I mean by that is we have comfort in our lives all the time. Take away one part of comfort temporarily and to see what's revealed from that. So if you doom scroll in the morning, stop that for 10, 15 minutes. Do something that benefits you.
Do a plank.
Move the body. Move the body. Dance. Now, I'm a woeful dancer, by the way. But I was going through a phase where I was waking up and I just felt so kind of depressed and wasn't going anywhere through, obviously, and the divorce. So I reminded myself, let's put some music on, upbeat music, dance badly, but realizing the body means so much. So remove a comfort, see what's revealed, and then replace it.
With what?
Whatever you find, whatever's
revealed.
to you. If we start deconstructing our lives to work out, actually, remember what Steve said, is it a luxury or is it a necessity? And weigh it up. If I do these exercises in the morning, what is the value? Well, the value is I get stronger muscles. I feel confident. I feel more stable. My nervous system is more stable. This confidence radiates within, also radiates out. It gives me a glow. But what's the threat of not doing it? Well, comfort starts to creep in. Daily tasks become stressful. Stress is one of those that we need to avoid. So make those life changes that benefit you, because we have to self-love. And it's also positive talk. You can do this. You don't need the validation from everyone else. Clearly it's supportive, but you do it what's right for you. And that's what's really important. When I do everything that is for me, because I then can give more to so many more people.
Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
And I'm definitely going to remove a couple of comforts from my life and see what's revealed.
Excellent.
We shall see. But thank you so much. Thank you.